sleep, what to do.
What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of What's in the Womanhood. Today I have a lovely guest with me. Sanal, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Sanal Mupaya, but you know me as the Unapologetic Housewife.
Right. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here.
And I want to talk about that.
Yes.
How did it come about? Why do you call yourself the Unapologetic Housewife?
Okay, so after having a career for over 10 years, so professionally I'm a marketeer, and for over 10 years I worked within the marketing space, working for global companies, managing and growing global brands. But when I became a mom, I decided that I wanted to do it full time. I wanted that to be my primary occupation. So became a housewife, and I started an Instagram page, and yeah, that's where the Unapologetic Housewife came about.
Oh, beautiful. And to be honest, now that I'm a mom, I can agree. It is like a full-time job.
Yep.
So it's not really like you are resting or whatever, but you've taken up something that is like, that takes up so much of your energy and so much of your time.
It's 24/7, 365. You can't put in leave. It's a proper full-time job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me some of the wildest things people have said to you about that decision.
Oh, wow. People have said things like, well, I mean, there's the, are you sure you want to do this? When I first let my family members and close friends, because, you know, I think we live in a society where it's encouraged for women to pursue their careers, and I was doing that and doing very well in my career.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had the sense that I'm almost taking women back by deciding to be a housewife. You know, even the term housewife, I know gets, you know, there's a negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
And this is why I even said I gave myself the handle, the Unapologetic Housewife, because there was a sense of I was expected to be apologetic about it.
Yeah,
You know, there were people who assumed that my husband forced me into doing it, or you know, or that I was, you know, I was losing something by letting go of my career. Which for me is actually the opposite, because I was very clear from before I even got married and had kids. I was clear that when I have kids, I absolutely want to make that my primary occupation. While I'm raising my kids, I want to be at home full time, being the dominant influence in their upbringing. So I made the call a while back, and when I met my husband, when we were dating, we had this conversation because I was very clear in my head that that's what I wanted to do when I have kids. I want to be able to be at home and raise them. And yeah, so the wildest comments I do get, you know, is people thinking that it's a bad decision, that I'm taking women back, you know. But for me, it certainly isn't the case. Absolutely.
Do you think it's because of, like, you know, this feminism movement that...
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, the funny thing is, for me, my understanding of feminism is about empowering women so that women can do what women want to do.
Exactly.
So that women are not told who they can be or what they can do. And so for me, this is exactly, I think, epitomizes feminism, because I choose to be a mom full time for my kids. I choose to be a career woman when I want to. It's about that freedom of being able to do what I want when I want to.
Exactly. I've always felt that way about feminism, right? Feminism, I think it's done amazing things for women, right? But I also feel like there's some toxicity that's come into it, you know? And for people like you, you've made that decision on your own, and someone taking that away from you is actually like anti-feminist to me, because it's your decision, and you are embracing your femininity, like being a mother and being there for your children. And I think that's exactly what it is. You described it like beautifully.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the biggest mistake, the most tragic mistake I think we can make as a society is to try and prescribe how people should live their lives.
Yeah.
I always make a point as well that this is what works for me and my family. And it's not to say this is the only way, that a family should be made up, where you've got a mom who's at home who's raising kids, you've got a father who's working, who's the breadwinner. That's what works for us,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I grew up in a family where both my parents worked. And funny enough, in a way, that is what drove me to be so clear in wanting to be at home when I have kids. Because I remember I used to come home when I was in primary school. Because I used to finish so early, I'd be the first one back home. And I remember there was a time when we didn't have a maid, so I'd literally get home and I'd be at home alone. And I'm talking, this was about grade 4, grade 5. So I used to take house keys to school with me. I used to take the bus from school. I'd get home and I'd be home alone. It would be for about an hour or so, and then my mom would get home. But I remember, it was a massive expectation, and there was no choice at the time. It just was the way that it is. And I'd get home and I'd wait for my mom, and she'd get there about an hour later. So there was that hour where I'd be alone, and I'd literally get home and just watch TV because I'd also be scared to walk around the house. I'd literally get home, turn on the TV, and watch until my mom got home.
Yeah.
And then I remember the one time after school I had gone to my friend's house. And I remember getting to her house, and her mom was a housewife. She got home, and lunch was prepped. There was someone to welcome her home, and we were served lunch, and the mom had made a spread,
Yeah.
And I just remember having a feeling that this is what I want for my kids,
Yeah.
I remember feeling like I wish I had somebody who welcomes me home like that, And I didn't have a horrible upbringing. I must just underscore that, It's just, that was how my house was set up. But when I got exposed to that, I realized that it could be different. It can be done differently. And that's when I was just like, I think that's what I want for me. When I have my own family, I want to be able to be the one who takes my kids to school. I want to be the one who welcomes them home when they get home. I wanted to be involved in their schooling, I want to be an active parent in the parent bodies at school. Like, I totally wanted to immerse myself in my kids' upbringing,
Yeah.
So, and that's a choice. And I managed to find a partner who also agreed, who was also of the same mind. And this is how our life has turned out, and this is how we've designed our life.
Yeah. And I don't think anything in life is always so rosy. So I'm curious to know, because I'm a career mom and I have my own set of challenges, but I'm curious to know what are your challenges,
Oh wow, there are so many of them, and you're right. I think career moms and stay-at-home moms, we face some similar and other different challenges, but for me, I think my biggest challenge comes in the form of being at home 24/7 and engaging with my kids. As much as this is the objective and this is the reason why I did this, but it's also the biggest challenge, because
I've always wondered how you people survive. Listen, I come home, as soon as I walk in, that child wants my maximum attention, 100%. I can't cope. I can't breathe. I don't have space. She's all up in my space. How do you do it?
So for me, that's my life. That's my everyday.
Wow.
Someone's on top of me, I'm being touched, there's the attention, so my interactions 90% of the time in a day are with an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and now I have a 6-month-old. So
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank
she's
you.
so beautiful.
Thank you very much. But that's my life. So I do crave adult time a lot.
Yeah.
And this is why I then have my page as well. So my Instagram page, the Unapologetic Housewife, that persona is a big part of my outlet.
Yeah.
Because I engage a lot with other moms, working moms, stay-at-home moms, and it's a platform where we actually can then vent about the challenges that we have. We can laugh about some of the things that we struggle with. I like to share a lot of things because I read a lot about parenting. I follow a lot of other moms, and so I like to share the things that I come across things
You
that
know,
work for me.
I think every holiday, I know that Sana is going to post. She's going to post. She's going to be like, so.
Yep, because the
The
holidays.
helper is going. Mommies, how are you feeling?
Yep. And those are really the things in, it's almost the cycles in my life, because the maids, the nannies, the aunties, whatever you call them, they
Yeah.
are a major important part of our lives. I'm sure you agree as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It definitely does take a village to raise kids. And for some people, they're lucky enough that that village consists of grandparents and siblings, or,
Yeah.
family members.
Yeah.
But for some of us, we have to create that village for ourselves in the form of, helpers and maids and au pairs and things like that to help us
Yeah.
manage the mammoth role of being a mom.
Yeah. And like, haven't people like giving you the side eye, like, what do you need a helper for? Like, you're at home. Like,
So, so I remember I did a reel on Instagram about that,
Yeah.
where I was just encouraging stay-at-home moms to get the help.
Yeah.
I think there's this notion that if you're a stay-at-home mom, that you
shouldn't
should, because then what are you doing all day, But I always say, if you look at any organization, there is a senior manager who's got an assistant, who's got juniors, running a household is a massive job,
Yeah.
and to think that you can do it single-handedly is a massive task, and this is what leads to a lot of mental health issues, because
So true.
first of all, the role of being a mom or being a housewife, you're already very limited in the amount of venting you can do, because you're judged if you can't say you hate your job if you're a stay-at-home mom, because then there's the connotation that you hate your kids,
Yeah.
or you hate your husband, or you hate your family.
Yeah.
But you know what? You can say, oh, I hate my job, or I had a horrible day at work today.
Yeah, yeah.
So already there are those struggles where women or stay-at-home moms or housewives may not have the space to speak about these things openly.
Yeah.
So it's very important to get the help, so that it also affords you space to exist in spaces where you are just you, and you're not mom, and
Yeah.
you're not a wife, So, places where you can have an outlet, whether it's engaging with friends, just going out with your friends, doing activities by yourself, having a hobby. It's so important to also remove yourself, because unlike someone like you, like you're saying earlier, you go to work, so you have that break from being mom, you have
Exactly.
that break from being a wife,
Yeah.
and you exist as, whatever it is that you do in your career and, in whatever space. But if you're a stay-at-home mom, you are stuck in this role 24/7, so even during holidays, you're still working, So this is why for me, I always say, get the help. When you go on
Yeah.
holiday, take your mate. If you can afford to, get the help and make
Yeah.
sure that, and fight for it, if you have to. But absolutely get the help, embrace the help. And for people who say that you shouldn't have help, you ask them at their jobs if they're doing everything.
Exactly. They have assistants. They
Yeah.
have no.
There's structures to help them to get things done properly.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
even as a housewife, there are priorities. There are certain things that you should spend your time doing that are much more productive. I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. For me, doing homework and being much more involved in their academic achievement in that academic space is much more important. I think that's where I can make the most impact for my kids, versus doing laundry or washing the dishes or cleaning the house.
Yeah.
That has to be done, and it's very important that it gets done, but I don't have to be the person to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, that's really true. My husband is always saying, if you can afford the help, just get the help. There's no price for suffering.
Yep.
In this world.
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely. No.
Okay. So tell me more about, how do you balance out life, like, your life, like being mom and being Sanel? Tell me about that.
It's a struggle. It's a struggle. I wish I could say that I'm on top of it and that it happens as often as I think I need to. But being a mom as well, and I'm sure you'll agree as well, that it's, there's the term mom guilt.
Oh, yeah.
So even when I do manage to do things outside of the household, there's always that guilt of leaving my kids behind, and But now being a mom for the third time, I think to a certain degree I've mastered being able to prioritize myself. So for me, I am a creative. So I love getting into a space where I can create. And again, this is where then the Unapologetic Housewife comes into play. Because then I get to be creative on my Instagram page. I get to engage a lot with other moms. And now I've even started to monetize that brand. So I start to then tap into my professional space while linking it with my purpose of being a mom. And it's been beautiful because I even get to work with my kids at times.
Yeah, you did so well. I saw the NB content that you were doing. That was like really well done.
So I absolutely, thank you. So I absolutely love doing that because in a way I've almost been able to design my life and my career to be able to coexist in a very balanced space. But then also I love to just, spa days, or even something as simple as just getting into a space where I can go to a place and just read and be by myself because alone time is so important for me because I hardly ever get that. I'm never alone, whether I'm taking a shower or I'm sleeping or, the kids are always there, so that is really important. And I try to prioritize it as much as possible.
Let's talk about friends. Like, do you hang out with friends like often, or you're more of the loner?
No, not as often as I'm definitely not a loner.
Okay.
I don't get to hang out with my friends as often as I'd like to. But what's been great is that I've acquired a lot of mommy friends.
Okay.
So from school and from my page, I've met a lot of other moms, and I find those are the relationships I enjoy the most because I think with other moms, they get me and we get each other. We even understand the fact that it's tough for us to get together as often as we'd like to, I saw a meme the other day and it said something along the lines of when you and your mommy friends try to set a date and realize that you're busy for the next 20 years, and it really feels like that sometimes because we plan and we probably have 5 failed meetings before we actually get to meet.
Oh yeah, I can relate to that one.
But then what's also nice is that we can also be easy in that because we know it's tough. I have friends who can just literally show up at my house and they'll bring cake. In fact, a recent example. It's a mom friend. We met on Instagram. She followed me, and then we met in person. At some point, we bumped into each other, exchanged numbers, and we've become friends since. And she reached out to me the other day, just asking, "How's the baby and how's everything going?" And I kind of just offloaded on her. I was overwhelmed, and and she did the sweetest thing because at first she said. Because the crux of my venting was just about I needed some, adult conversation. I just felt like I've been stuck in the house with the baby and the kids and then she's just like, let's meet for coffee and again, we tried it didn't happen, this came up and she just showed up at my house with cake and donuts and she was just like, it's fine, I'll bring the adult conversation to you.
Yeah.
And I actually got so emotional because she knew exactly what it was that I needed.
Yeah.
And she almost forced it upon me, and she was just like, we don't need to go somewhere, I'll come to you. It was so beautiful. We just sat, we chatted. It was awesome, So it's those kinds of friends that I think all mommies need. Where they get it and they know exactly what you need and it's beautiful. So those are the kinds of friendships I have now and that I enjoy the most right now.
Somebody was telling me that some single women, like let's say you're in a circle of friends,
right.
And then the single ones, they start kind of like not relating to the ones who are married or who have kids because they kind of feel like you guys are always coming up with excuses and all of that. And then, those friends kind of like start falling away. Do you think like, as mommies, we could do a bit better in like trying to keep those friendships or, some people are in your life for a season and then you just kind of just let the friendship go and you move on? What do you think?
I think I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's also, it's a reality. Being a mom is all consuming,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've had friendships that have kind of faded away, ever since I became a mom. But I also believe that it's a two-sided thing. As a mom, you also need to make an effort, you know. But I also think friends also need to be understanding of the new role that you've come into. I mean, it happens as well, even from a career perspective, where you get into a new position that becomes much more demanding, and you don't have time to see your friends, or you start a business and it requires so much more of you, So I think it's really about making an effort on both sides and understanding the situations that you're both in, But it's definitely, I think I would be disingenuous if I didn't say that it's really tough as a mom to make time for friends. And like, I've had friends who've had to force themselves onto me because I absolutely just disappear into motherhood sometimes, and then they'll literally just show up at my house and they'll be like, because I knew that if I keep trying to set something up, it's never going to happen. So, and
for me, that's Crystal. Crystal, if you're watching this. Crystal, my friend Crystal, she would just show up at my house with food or wine, and she'll be like, girl, how you doing? Are you good? Or she'll just come and pick me up. We go for Zumba. Like, let's go and work out or whatever. Let's go for a run. And I feel like having those friends is always good. And she's been my friend even from the time that she was single and I was married, and now she's married. And, I think it's beautiful to keep, those friendships alive.
No, I think everybody needs a Crystal, a Crystal type friend. Because in any friendship or any relationship, everybody has to be putting in, making some kind of effort, And this is a season as well, We're going through a season of motherhood. On the other side of that, you still need your friends. So we just need to keep working at it and maintaining those friendships. And I feel the ones that fall away, then, like you say, maybe it was also just a friendship for a season. But we're evolving as people, You're now a mom, and there'll be a mom at some point as well, or, we evolve. And I guess the true friendships then last through the evolutions.
So, have there been times where you thought, okay, maybe I shouldn't have quit like my 9 to 5?
Yes. There've been many times.
I love the honesty.
Yes, there've been many, many times. I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say that, like there have been times when, I'm going through LinkedIn and I see people that I used to work with, people who were my juniors, who've now achieved so much. I have moments where I look at that and I feel like, I think, where would I be right now in my career had I not stopped? I have moments when I'm frustrated at home, where I just feel like, I probably would be much better off in an office. I wish I'd also get a break from this, So no, definitely. I mean, but would I have it any other way? No, I don't regret my choice. I'm very clear on my why I'm doing this, And it's also not a life sentence, I'm doing this while my kids are young. Once my kids are a certain age and they're independent and they don't need me as much, absolutely, then I'll go back into my career. And even now, like I was saying, I try and integrate elements of the things that I'm passionate about into my season of housewifehood, if I can call it that.
Okay, no, that's really nice. So, like in Zim, the economy is just like, it's a bit crazy. I mean, you think about the rate, it's like galloping, like things are going wild, right? I think one thing, like us young people, we usually tell each other, we're like, oh, you need a double income home, What are your thoughts on that? Like, let's say someone really wants to be like a stay-at-home mom, and that's what the decision that you made. And like in these turbulent times, I mean, they probably should weigh it out, right? Like, it depends.
I always say, I think one of the most common question I get on my Instagram page are from women who are either housewives, but have the inferiority complex where they feel like maybe they're not valued. But the next most frequent question I get asked are women who actually want to be stay-at-home moms, but they don't know how to, where exactly like you're saying, where it's like, well, I guess we need the income, or, it's how do I even start to have that conversation with my husband because of, how things are and how the household runs.
Yeah.
And my response is always, you need to be aligned with your partner, you know. I always say it's a privilege to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to stay at home and raise my kids. Because the reality of it is that, the financial aspect of raising kids is a very important one as well, you know. So it needs to be something that's planned, So like I said, when I was dating, I would share that with the people I was dating, that, for me, when we talk about kids, how many kids do you want? This is the number of kids I want, and I actually want to be at home when I have kids. I want to raise my kids myself, and, so we planned it, and it was very much planned with my husband, so much so that as much as that was the plan, when we had our first child, we were not in a financial space to be able for me to stay at home. So for the first 3 years of my firstborn child, I was working. He was going to daycare, because we needed the dual income in the household. But then because it was part of the plan, we worked towards it, and we set it up in a way where we were in a position and we were comfortable to have only one source of income coming into the household.
Yeah.
But definitely, do what works for your household, because the flip side of forcing a certain situation is the building of resentment,
Yeah.
You don't want to be at home and have your husband feeling burdened now that he has to bring in all this money.
Yeah.
And it can make your career as a housewife terrible as well, because that's when then your husband doesn't value what you bring to the table, so to speak, Because it's also very important for your husband to value your role as a housewife, because if there's that disconnect, then it doesn't work. There's resentment from him where he resents that you're at home, and then he has to work this much harder to provide, and then you resent him because then he's obviously not valuing what you do, and so it absolutely has to be a meeting of two minds.
Yeah. And I think the key thing there is that you got to really know who you are and what you want, because I feel like if you didn't know what you want, then you wouldn't have been so intentional even in the dating phase. So because you were intentional, then it was always like part of the plan and you worked towards it.
Absolutely. I'm a very intentional person. I've always been very clear about my vision for my life and how I wanted it to play out. And I always say I pray about it, I meditate on it, and then I actively work towards it, you know. And it's really, for me, been a blessing, because I've been able to almost design the way I want my life to be. And not to say that it's not plagued with challenges and issues and disappointments and. But on an overall perspective, I've always been clear on how I want my life to be. And I've been blessed that I've been able to make it happen.
Our upbringing, I feel like growing up, we were always told that as a woman, you should always have your own money. You don't want to be asking for money for diapers, for things in the house, money for things in the house and all of that. So I'm curious to know, how do you manage that? Do you get a wife allowance? Okay, so every month I need $1,000 or something. I don't know.
So for me, it was actually an adjustment, because I had worked for 10 years. I had a career, I was earning my own money. But again, like I said, this was all planned. So even in terms of how we run the household and the income, and, I think things are slightly different now, because we are also living in Zimbabwe. So when we moved from South Africa, which is when I actually stopped working, and then we moved to Zimbabwe, we've been here now for, it's going on 5 years. Because of my husband getting a job here, so it was kind of a setup where we're expats, so everything is kind of planned out, because for me, I would have had to stop working for us to move to Zim. So even them compensating for me having to move to Zimbabwe and not be working.
Oh, okay.
But finances in the household, we work on budgets. So my husband is a stiffler for like budgets and he's super organized. You know, so there's budgets, there's, you know, everything. So there isn't a situation of having to ask for money for this, you know. We work on budgets, we know this is how much money is required for this and this, you know, and then that's how we just take care of finances. But then also, I mean, like I was saying, you know, I've started monetizing the stuff that I do on social media as well. And my main occupation is being a housewife and looking after my family, but it's not my only occupation. So there are other things that I do. I have, like I was saying, you know, my background is in marketing. So digital marketing is what I do. So I also manage social media pages for brands, a couple of brands here in Zim. There's some brands as well in South Africa, small businesses. So there is work and income that I generate for myself as well.
Yeah. And I've noticed like a lot of stay-at-home moms in Zim, they always have a little
side hustle
that they're doing. Because
so,
I mean, it feels nice. Like you don't want to always be like, hey, can I have money for the spa or whatever? If you have like your own little,
it's for monetary. You know, you might do it for the money, but also for me, more than anything, it's more about having a space where you exist as yourself, where you can express yourself in, you know, whether it's in a creative way or, you know, whether you're baking cakes or whatever, you make a bit of income. But then you also have a space where you do something that you enjoy and that's just for you. Because, you know, I always say when I say to people that I'm a housewife, I also say that I'm in the service industry because I serve everyone in my household, you know. That's what I do. And when you're in the service business, you give a lot of yourself, you know. So being able to have a side hustle and do something where you're generating your own income, you know, you just exist in a space where it's just you and you get to serve your own purpose and your own needs, you know. So that's the role it plays as well.
And I've always seen that, and that's why when a certain politician, she posted something that I was so baffled. Like she said, you know, this is why these housewives in Zimbabwe, they're just watching Indian movies and what? And I was like, which housewives is she talking about? I was like, that was so untrue. Okay, let's talk about balancing your relationship, like your marriage and being a mom. Like, how does that go? You know that saying when people say your husband is like your first baby?
Don't let my husband hear you say that.
Oh, well, it's true.
My big baby. My biggest baby.
I know. Tell me about that. Yeah.
It's so important. It's so important for me. I think the foundation of our family is our marriage, you know. Our kids came from this marriage, and the success of our family resides squarely on the success of our marriage. So I prioritize my husband, I prioritize our marriage, I prioritize the romance in our marriage very much.
You guys do date nights?
Absolutely, absolutely. Every Thursday nights are date night. I mean, I think sometimes it gets a bit interrupted, like we had a small baby now, so, you know, it hasn't been as consistent, but absolutely a priority because if that falls apart, then everything else does. So date night is very important. I do even little things like when I make his lunchbox, I'll leave him a little note in there, you know.
That's so cute.
Or I'll send him a sexy message during the day, you know. Because it's also important for me to keep him interested as well, because as a housewife, it's also very easy to fall into a slump of, you know, he left me in the morning in my PJs, he comes back in the evening, I'm still in my PJs. You know, I've got my bonnet on, and, you know, because you're working from home, you know, that's your workspace, and there's no pressure to look cute when you're at home if you're breastfeeding or, you know. So for me, it's also very important to make sure that I keep things interesting for him, you know. I also understand that he also carries quite a burden being the breadwinner, you know, and the sole provider for our home. So I know the stresses that come along with working and long hours. So I try and create an environment for him at home where he can feel like, you know, he can relax and he can feel appreciated, you know. So yeah, for me, it's very, very important. And I prioritize our marriage and keeping the flame burning.
It's really important. It's really important. I find that to be really beautiful, and it creates like that beautiful, warm environment for your kids as well. You know,
it's so important for kids to see their parents in love. It's important for them to see their parents showing affection openly in front of them.
Yeah.
And equally so, I also say it's very important for them to see you disagree, for them to see you fight, for them to see you fight and make up, you know, because that's also the reality of relationships, you know, because the first relationship they're ever going to witness is us, their parents, you know. So we, it's such an important role that we're playing as parents because we're setting the standard for our kids of what marriage is about. So yes, very important for the kids to see that as well.
I love how you brought up, like, it's important for them to see you fight and make up, you know, because I think it's good for them to see that, and you know, they could even start teasing you and be like, "Are you still mad at daddy?" Like, I mean, come on.
I love boy kids because boy kids are always in mommy's corner.
Oh,
so the question is always about, what did daddy do, mommy? Did daddy make you mad? Like, yeah, he did.
They'll probably go to him as well and say, "Did you say sorry to mom?
Yeah.
Like, you need to go. Like, buy her some flowers or something."
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I think
very
it's important. And I feel like they won't be so afraid when they see you fight, because if they know, okay, fights are normal and people make up, they won't be afraid, like, okay, why are they fighting? Like, what's happening, you know?
Exactly. Very, very important. Even for them and their understanding of how they relate to other people, whether in romantic relationships or just relationships in general, in friendships, you know, that conflict does happen, but there's making up as well, you know, because that's what we're doing as parents as well. We're socializing our kids. We're teaching them how to behave and interact in the outside world. You know, we are the first example of what life is all about. You know? And it can be daunting sometimes as well, you know. That's another very daunting part of parenting, in that it's such an important role that we're playing, because they say our kids watch us more than they actually listen to what we say.
So
you know?
true.
So it's one thing to tell your kids about, you know, behaving a certain way, and what they see is what is more important or what makes more of an impact for them, you know. So if they see you constantly fighting, you know, and then the makeup is not there for them to see that after a fight, actually, we actually do make up and things, you know, can be mended or go back to normal, you know. So it's important for them to see every aspect of the relationship.
You know, when I became a mom, I never thought, like, there would be this heavy weight on me where I realized that every stage is going to be difficult. From the 4th trimester, that was like something else. Those first 3 months of the baby, like, my goodness. And then raising the baby and constantly worrying and all of that. And then they become a toddler. I'm at the toddler phase. And
you keep thinking it's going to get better, right?
And then it's like a new challenge. Like, what? I don't know. Like, how do you... 3 kids? Like, girl, how are you doing it? Like, are you all right? And I love, like, you know, social media is now being more open about how difficult it is being a mom. Like, it's not all rosy and cute. Like, it's hard. Like, it's actual hard.
No, it is. And you know, sometimes I think to myself, I wonder how our parents got through it, because at least now we've got social media. You know? You can engage with mothers all around the world who are going through the same thing, who are having the same challenges, and it kind of makes you feel better, you know, and you feel normal, and it's like, okay, so it is overwhelming for everyone. You know, I'm not the only one who's struggling with this. You know? And a few weeks ago, I really, really, really was in a tough space because the enormity and the weight of having 3 kids really hit home, you know, because I've got my eldest who is 8 turning 9, you know, he's in grade 4, he's got his schedules, he's got his sports stuff, he's got school stuff, he's writing exams, so I'm helping him with exams and revision. I've got my 5-year-old who's in grade 0, and, you know, he's got his own things at school. I need to remember they've got a trip, they're going somewhere, you know. And then I've got this little baby who is literally dependent on me, you know. I got to a point where I was really, really overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And it was really, you know, it was the one thing where I mentioned the incident of my friend who actually just really imposed herself, where she was just like, I'm coming to rescue you. And she was just, you know.
Yeah.
But it's also great to be able to talk to other moms, you know.
Yeah.
I went on my page and I'm just like, hey, moms of 3 kids, like, why didn't anybody warn me about this, you know?
I think I saw that post.
Yeah, like,
I was like, is this gonna be me? I don't know. Maybe I'll stick to one. I don't know.
No, it's a lot. It's absolutely a lot. And this is where the community is so important.
Yeah.
It's so important to have people you can speak to who can relate, you know.
Yeah.
They say that the hardest stage of parenting is whatever stage you're going through. So
Yeah.
exactly like you're saying, you know. And I feel like I'm going through all stages at once because, you know, I've got what do you call them, a preteen, you know? And then I've got a toddler, and then I've got an infant, you know, like I'm going through all the stages at the same time, you know. So it is a lot.
Yeah.
And it's important as well to just to give yourself that grace, you know,
Yeah.
to understand that don't aim for perfection because there's no perfection in parenting, you
Yeah,
know. Some days you're winning, you're on top of it. You know, I pride myself in being on top of running my household, you know. Because when I went into this, I was just like, you know what? I come from a space in my career where there were systems in place to, you know, to run things. And that's the approach I took going into it, you know. So I've got routines and this is the stuff that I even coach on my page, you know. I just share things that work for me and make my life easier.
Girl, I need some coaching.
But
I'm not coping.
And it's because it's a lot, you know, so you must have those systems in place. But it doesn't work like clockwork all the time, you know. These are kids, you know, and some days it works, some days it doesn't. Some days are really great and I feel like, you know, I'm winning at this motherhood thing.
Yeah.
And other days I feel like a failure and I feel like, you know, why did I have so many kids? Am I the right person? Was I supposed to, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, it's about giving yourself that grace as well to say that some days you're going to win, other days you're not, but this is the journey of it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I think that's actually a beautiful way to end the podcast. Some days you're going to win.
And some days,
yeah.
you just go with it.
You just go with it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in. Like, so much wisdom. I feel like this time was just like too short. Definitely going to call you in for another episode.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was so looking forward to this and it's been so much fun.
Thank you. All right, guys. So we'll see you in the next episode.